the Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burt and Stephen Molyneux.
Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racehorse Podcast. I'm joined again by Stephen Molyneux, who's back in the UAE. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. We've got approaching temperatures a little bit similar to yours. Bedded in for a couple of days. There was talk actually about our next race at Newbury being run at an earlier time, but they've decided to go ahead and keep it at the originally scheduled time. So that's probably good for us and probably help some of the, our one and only overseas runner who isn't going to have to juggle about with getting her jockey here a bit quicker, which is probably a relief for them. So today we're going to talk about the Royal Cavalry of Oman International Stakes. It's a Group 2 run over 6 furlongs at Newbury, and their sponsorship takes over the race, which was formerly known as the Zabeel International. They took over sponsorship last year, and we've got quite a competitive little race with 2 fillies who were quite clearly on the upgrade. And we'll start off with we'll go down from the top with Paramount Angel.
Yeah, well, obviously she's. He's likely to struggle probably most of the 4 colts in there, or the sort of locally based horses. 11-year-old. I'm sure Delith Thomas would have been delighted with his victory at Newbury in a handicap where he beat Balkis, and some training performance to get him back as an 11-year-old and in the winners' enclosure. And I'm sure Delith has obviously identified this as a possible race where she can pick up a bit of prize money as well. Very hard to see him winning, but great that she has declared the horse, and hopefully he'll run well.
Yeah, and he meets Balkis on the same terms, but obviously this is over considerably less trip. One thing that I did know, although he does have form on fast ground, when Charlie Price got off him after the win at Newbury, he did say that he felt that we'd had a little shower before the racing went off, and he felt that little bit of rain probably helped him, which is often the case with an older horse where he might want a little bit more ease in the ground than perhaps younger horses do. Yeah,
which is obviously very fair, isn't it? The 11-year-old, the joints will be getting no easier, so he'd perhaps want that bit of ease in the ground, dropping back in trip as well, which not going to be ideal, but we've had a bit of a break since then as well. So I'm sure Delith will be looking to finish 4th and 5th and pick up some prize money.
Yeah, and then we move down now to Zayn Anchor Centurion. This is a horse he's been course and distance placed earlier in his career, but obviously he's had a season off due to a minor injury. Not surprising that after that absence, he's taken his time to come back. He's had 2 runs now, and last seen at Goodwood, where obviously that was going to be a big ask for him to feature, particularly after a layoff, and he's got a bit to find with the horses that ran there.
He has probably not so much to find if you go back 2 or 3 years. Maybe I misread it. I thought he was going to retire after Goodwood, but maybe Paul Simmons was referring to his last ever race at Goodwood. Because I know he's obviously running that race a couple of times, so good to see him back out. He's obviously a 9-year-old. He's had that absence, as you referred to, so he's not going to be getting any better at this stage. But I can see him putting up a bold show for a fairly long way. It's obviously going to be an easier race for him, probably over a more suitable trip as well. He's always a horse that's shown quite a bit of speed, so I wouldn't be surprised if he could hold on for 3rd in this. On back class, that's probably about where he belongs, and they'll be hoping he can show up for a long way.
Okay, and one horse which has got her best form has come on quick ground is a Beer Athba, albeit that all her wins have been on the all-weather. She's won from 7 furlongs to 1.5 miles on the all-weather. But she was 4th in this last year. She was 3rd behind Akhlil Athba and Bayan Athba in the prep for this, and that was on good. I'd certainly have her ahead of Zayn Anchor Centurion, I think, in this.
Yeah, just purely based on the fact that she is tough, she's durable. She obviously runs in many of our group races, which doesn't make it that easy for her, bearing in mind her rating in the in the high 80s, but she certainly always gives her all. And as you referred to there, her form on fast ground does outweigh her form on easier ground, and obviously ground went against her at Goodwood last year. I thought, again, she showed up well in the race this year before probably finishing where she was entitled to, and around about 7th or 8th behind Lady Princess, but wasn't beaten a million miles and dropping back to 6th. She was 3rd in the trial, obviously behind Eclair Lathbar, and will have work cut out to reverse form with that one first and foremost. But yeah, I think she can finish 3rd, and a lot will depend on how close up she finishes on the early stages of the race, and if she is taken on for the lead, I think it probably will be quite fast and furious up there. But Peter Hammersley will be hoping that she can get a bit of a solo race on her own and just hold on for that all important black type. I'm sure she's not too far away from retirement, being aged 8.
And one of the younger of the older horses is Balkis. We've already mentioned her a couple of times. She's not tried 6 furlongs before. She's been placed over 7, but they've not necessarily been scintillating runs. She was runner-up on her debut, so you can forgive her that, when she was beaten about 4 or 5 lengths, I think, by Wanassa, who proved to be a very good horse. But she was a bit closer in that handicap last year at Wolverhampton behind AJS Hajjaj, who obviously I don't think we've seen again, but he clearly looked a horse of some potential at that time. She's come on again, as you say. She was not beaten far by Paramount Angel. I think it was ahead in the photo, and they meet on the same terms. I noticed that they've exchanged the cheap pieces for a visor this time.
Well, hopefully that will sharpen her up. Go back to the start of the season, she was probably kind of the ready filly when she met Eclair Lathbar, and she is better off at the weights again at Newbury, but quite whether their career paths have gone in the same direction. Obviously, Eclair Lathbar's improved considerably since then, and Balkis has probably done no more than held her own, particularly with that second behind Paramount Angel. So she's got to improve. But you look down her profile, she's not exactly over raced. She's only had 10 starts so far. So she's reasonably consistent. She's been in the first 2 and 5 of those 10 starts, and whether she can raise her game from her handicap mark of 70 odd is perhaps a touch debatable. But I think there've been excuses for her 2 defeats this season behind Wanassa on her second start, and obviously last time behind Lady Princess, where she did actually finish ahead of Bir Athbar. So that puts her in the mix for perhaps finishing 3rd or 4th, even if ratings don't maybe suggest that she can.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important thing about this race. For the places, it certainly looks very competitive, and also for those first 2 spots, you've got Eclair Lathbar and Fatina, who are pretty closely matched on ratings. If we take Eclair first, she was a very, very good performance, despite being very green and jinking left when she won here over course and distance in the prep. And she'll be joined by Tad O'Shea this time, and she looks to have a very progressive profile.
Yeah, she is. Obviously, Athbar Racing could have run 2 or 3 in this. They've relied on Eclair Lathbar for whatever reason. Maybe Bayan Athbar's still recovering from whatever forced her out of Goodwood. But even in Eclair Lathbar, they've got a very good challenger. She took a big step up when beating Bayan Athbar last time. Perhaps that horse idled in front, which maybe just set things up for Eclair. But they did pull miles clear of the rest, rated in the hundreds as a result. And as you say, not too much between her and Fatina on ratings, and that's banged up to standard with a Group 3, Group 2, particularly when both of these fillies are likely to improve still further. So she's proven over course and distance. She's going to get another good pace to aim at, you'd say, and I think she's going to improve again. So yeah, I don't think this is a case of the Royal Cavalry bringing over a good filly from France and just taking back their own prize money. That Fatina is going to have to work hard to beat Eclair Lathbar.
There is a little bit of collateral form between the two. When Bayan Athbar ran in January over in Belgium, the horse she beat, I think it's called Safana, that was a horse that beat Fatina on Fatina's last run by half a length, albeit different distances and different surfaces. But It's certainly the one bit of collateral form that we've got to go on at the moment, and also with Ecleal, you know, she's proven over course and distance, and that time that she won in on that last run effectively breaks the course record. It wasn't quite as fast as Bayan Athba, but Bayan Athba was unfortunately hand timed because there was a problem with the timing system at Newbury, but it was certainly faster than Nashwan Al Khalidia when he won the Zubail in 2010. So I think it's, you know, albeit that Bayan Athba certainly did idle a bit, and she, you know, in post-race interviews, both with Tom at Haydock when she won last year and also Sam Hitchcock, it does seem that was it Sam Hitchcock, whoever rode last time, it does seem that headgear, whenever she reappears, will be applied. And as far as Bayan Athba concerned, I think she's more likely to run at Haydock. This gives a clear run to the Derby. It gives us 4 weeks roughly to recover. So I think it's probably a shrewd move by the Athbar team and Phil to not take each other on in this race when she's clearly a live Derby contender.
Yeah, exactly. We do have those couple of group races coming up, so quite shrewd to keep them apart. The point you made about the potential heat at Newbury right at the start probably does even it up a little bit between Ecleal, Athbar and Fatina, because obviously from Phil Collinson's base, it's not going to be as arduous a journey, you'd imagine, given the complexities of Brexit and whatever else you want to blame for the difficulties of still travelling. So that could be a bit of a leveler. They'll be hoping that Fatina does travel over well and that she is in peak form to take on Ecleal Athbar. Yeah,
and Freddie Sanchez has sent us forward a little video of Fatina during her last bits of work, which we can watch as we're talking through this. She's won and she's been placed over a furlong further. I mean, when I messaged him yesterday, he said, you know, 7 furlongs is very definitely her trip. But having said that, you know, she's trying 6 furlongs for the first time. It's straight, and she's a very fast filly. So there's no reason to suggest that she's going to struggle dropping down in trip, certainly on the basis of her earlier form. The only thing that you might say would be a problem also is she's never raced on ground quicker than good. And it's going to be rattling quick at Newbury on Saturday, and that might have an effect on her chances at the sharp end of the race.
Yeah, all possible negatives that you'd associate, I suppose, with most horses from France travelling over to the UK. But she's proven consistent in her fairly light career so far. She has looked as though she's seen out the mile the twice she's tackled it. Ironically, those 2 races both came in the toughest grade that she's contested, beaten twice in Group 3. So she is going to need to step up if she is to make her mark at that higher level. But you know, there's nothing wrong with her form behind Safwa last time. The owner mate, who I think heads to Belgium next for a listed race, something that I saw this morning. But not really any of her form could be classed as being very strong. But at the same time, I think she's had a great opportunity to prove herself. So yeah, there is 1 or 2 down to the ground, dropping back to 6 furlongs. She has shown pace to lie handy in her races, but again, races that haven't been run at a true pace, and probably straight course races are always likely to be that bit faster anyway. So she might find that going down a straight track is in her favour. And Newbury's probably one of the stiffer tracks that we'd run at anyway. So that might just counteract the fact that it is going to be pretty fast ground. So she is still progressing. I don't really see other excuses other than, you know, the potential of travelling over in what could be hot conditions.
Absolutely, and like I say, you know, on form so far, you know, they're both. She's the one who's a little bit more experienced in Ecleal Athbar, and she has at least contested group company. And it's hard to know, isn't it? There are a few negatives there, but you know, they're quite closely matched. I can see them both being involved quite closely at the finish.
Yeah, and what I'd probably want to see in terms of justifying the status of a Group 2 race is these 2 to pull nicely clear of the rest. And then we've alluded to the pace; it should hopefully be strong, and that can help, you know, bring the class to the fore. And that's what these 2 fillies at the bottom have.
Absolutely, and certainly from a UK point of view, we want to, that kind of distance between those two and the rest would be good, because obviously we want to keep the rating of this race up. And so that's very important for us. It's been very difficult during the last couple of years, and I know the EFAR Pattern Committee have been quite lenient with all the countries involved to not take too harsh a view of some of the races, because we haven't been able to have the international competition that we've had in previous years. But it's still important that we see a good race to maintain our form in the UK.
Yeah, indeed. I would still argue as well that it is hard for the horses to travel over, particularly to and from the UK. But I think, as I said earlier, your average rating for a Group 3 is 105, for a Group 2 it's 110. So once you take into account the fillies allowance that these two have, then these two are already very close to the mark.
Exactly. And one horse that's already well proven for the Royal Cavalry at the highest level is a horse they've got called Socko. He ran in Deauville this week, and he was a good winner, beating Abez and Ebraz in the Group 1 Doha Cup. What did you think of that, Stephen?
Yeah, he's just a great sort, isn't he? I mean, he feels as though he's been around forever, but he's only a 5-year-old still. He's been back and forth from France to the UAE. He's been over to Saudi, a winner in Oman, back to France, where he's 2 from 2 this season. So he's a very hard character to knock. At the times, he has taken advantage of good opportunities, but his second in Saudi looks good form, and obviously this race at Deauville, a Group 1 with genuine Group 1 horses in behind. Abes looked as good as ever in Qatar over the winter. Ebraz might be getting on in years, but he can still dance the dance, and he wasn't totally disgraced in third. And then back to Jaraf, who was a Kahala Classic invitee last year. So a very good performance from Socko. I'm sure once again he'll be on his travels, races such as the Arabian World Cup first and foremost, and the Jewel Crown at the end of the year. They should all really enter the equation for what is a very tough and admirable Arabian.
Absolutely, and the Royal Cavalry have been a real good supporter of a racing around the world, and I think that's probably one of their best horses since Silvino Amori, who was very good in the UK on Dubai Day, which of course we no longer have. But we're certainly very appreciative of the Royal Cavalry's support of our races, and of course, going back to this race at Newbury on Saturday, they won it 3 times. With Al Mohanad, and also they won it with Al Chami, so they've got a real good association with this race. And I think now taking it forward, obviously with Bayan last year and this field this year, it's nice to maintain the continuity of the Royal Cavalry with our black type sprint races.
Yeah, it certainly is. My formative years in Arabian racing was synonymous with victories for the Royal Cavalry, when they would quite often bring over a very small but select team, and they send over not just horses, but racing personnel as well, don't they, to sort of learn the ropes in the UK and help expand their own racing system back in Oman. Obviously, recent events such as COVID has maybe put a slight pause on that, but they are still very active in France. But they buy good horses that are already proven, such as the case with Socko, who used to carry different ownership, and very good to see them involved, and it would be lovely to see them with a few more horses in the UK. Obviously, not always possible, but they are still active in Europe, as Socko has proven.
And that's one of the good reasons to see Fatina in this race. She'll be the first runner for the Royal Cavalry in the UK since 2019, and obviously COVID. And back in 2019, they were still bringing a small string back to the UK of younger horses to progress, and they had a couple of winners with Z-Man and Al Muataz, also I think it was the other one at Newbury also, I think. And they had Viva Baina, who was third in the Hatter. So there's still, it's really good to see them back. They sponsored another 4 races with us throughout the season, and our last race at Windsor, I spoke to their representative, Colonel Mohammed Ahadi, and he was saying that in Oman they're really pushing their breeding program, and to get the civilian population more involved with the racing. In the past, originally it was just the Royal Cavalry who raced. Then they started involving horses from a police force. And now they've started in the last sort of prior to COVID, in a couple of years prior to COVID, they were moving their annual National Day races with His Majesty's Cup, which you referred to, Sokol winning over the winter, around the country with pop-up race courses. So it's bringing racing to the people and encouraging more private owners, which can only be a good thing, particularly if those private owners then end up having horses racing in Europe and other parts of the Gulf. You've obviously seen a few of those in the UAE, actually, but yeah, I
mean, these things take time to evolve. It's probably only Dubai now seeing the fruits of that labour from 10, 15 years ago, where it was exclusive, well, not exclusively, but mainly the royal family that raced here, and obviously very similar over in Oman. Yeah, they've got Ibrahim Al Hadrami, who's very successful here in the UAE with many horses, not just for the Royal Cavalry, but other studs in and around Oman. So yeah, they are. I think they've got some very good horses. Al Hadrami was very successful in Dubai last season. I can only see that continuing, and like you say, hopefully that can spread out to a more international audience.
And of course, Fatina is a homebred for the Cavalry, let's not forget. So yeah, they could all sorts of reasons to celebrate their arrival back in the UK on Saturday. Thanks very much for taking part in this preview, Stephen, and we'll speak again next week.
No problem, Debbie. See you soon.